Started. Hello, friends. You are in for another special treat. I am with a special guest that I am so excited for this conversation and where we're going to get into and for you to learn about her work. I connected to her on TikTok, and this summer I am participating in a challenge called the 10K Summer Break Challenge, where white creators have been asked to sit down and share the platform and elevate. And this creator reached out and said, hey, I'll make videos. I love making videos, and has made such powerful videos that I've shared that I said, hey, do you want to come on my podcast and introduce my community more to you and your work? And they said yes. And now we're here, and I will now stop talking and allow my guests to introduce themselves, and they're going to answer my questions: who you are, what you do, and why do you do what you do. So pass it over.
Hello, I'm Dr. Kimberly Douglass, and thank you for opening up your platform to me on TikTok and in this space as well. This is really a treat.
It's a treat for me too.
I really enjoyed your videos since I started following you on TikTok. So who am I? Well, let me take a sip because my throat got dry just as I was starting to talk. So I am a wife, I'm a mother, so those are my roles. I'm also a full-time business owner, and I work with neurodivergent entrepreneurs to support them in their businesses and setting up their businesses, or peeling back the layers of their business to help them reconstruct some things from a neurodivergent point of view. I'm also a writer, which I'll talk mostly about that today, in the writing that I'm doing around decolonizing neurodivergence, which brings me to the bigger picture. I am an advocate. I am an activist. I've been an academic. And so you've got 3 A's there. And so with me being an advocate, an activist, and academic, I'm a person who likes to put ideas together. So I think in patterns, I think in networks, and being on TikTok a lot has really helped me to see all these different connections out there. And what I'm doing in my writing is pulling these things together and creating these whole loop conversations by synthesizing all these different thoughts. And the main thought, the way that this is all coming together, is through this theme of decolonizing neurodivergence, which I can talk about more.
Mm-hmm. I love it. When you give the visual of patterns and systems thinking, I too am that person, and love seeing and those themes and connections. It feels like safety to me. Once I can see the theme and understand it, then I'm like, I can breathe. So when you say like bringing it all together and applying it to your writing, I literally felt my body relax and lean in. Like, tell me more.
So, and I noticed that we both talk with our hands. So it's almost like when I'm talking, especially when I'm talking about patterns and I'm talking about pictures, it's almost as if I'm reaching out and grabbing things. And that reminds me of that scene in The Matrix. I think it was the first Matrix, or no, Minority Report, with Tom Cruise. And he's moving things around on the board, and you get the transparent board. And it's almost like there's a transparent board right in front of me where I can just move things around, except it's happening in my mind instead of on an electrical board.
I think it's funny that you said Matrix and went to Minority Report, because I always describe it as the Matrix. I'm like, you see it, and then once you see it, then it's like this, then you understand it. So I love that you came in and then it went there. So cool.
Right. Yeah. I made that connection really quick. And I wanted to add to my answer to the first question. When I first started in business, I left academia and transitioned into full-time business ownership. When I left academia, I was a coach to parents of children, of neurodivergent children. And so when you opened your platform, it was an automatic match, because I really enjoyed that type of content. I really enjoy putting the content, and we'll have to get together another time, because I've got all kinds of stuff, workbooks and things that I had put together. The reason why I moved away from that is because at the time that I was coaching parents, I still had a child who is school age.
Mhm.
And I found a lot of the things that were happening with them were still very triggering to me and my experience being his advocate.
Mhm.
And also it felt really heavy to me for that reason,
Mhm.
because I'm a systems thinker. I understand school systems. I understand a lot about the literature with regard to special education and supporting children who are neurodivergent. And what I understand is that there are no broken systems. There's a quote that I use frequently by W.E. Deming, I think it is, that a system is perfectly designed to get the result that it gets.
I just got goosebumps because I just said that this morning.
And it is, right? So people talk about how the system is broken, but it's not broken. Because if it were broken, it's serving someone.
Mhm.
And so in coaching other parents, I would see these patterns. I knew what was coming down the road, and we have been so conditioned to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps that families will go in and they say, well, I'm going to do this, and will not happen to my child, and this. But there are channels. They have a way of channeling every type of parent out there. So if you're the type of parent who's well educated like I am, and it's like, I'll go read some articles, I'll put it together, I'll make a plan. They have an app for that as well. So they got an app, like not literally, but
yeah, I know what you're saying.
Metaphorically speaking, they have a channel for each type of parent. And I was saying this to someone the other day who has a child who, and of course, I know everybody can't send their kid, can't homeschool and make other arrangements. I understand that. But she was asking me some questions about where this ends. And I was saying to her that what ends up happening with most families is that it just wears them down. And so prior to being a parent coach, I was very hesitant to ever suggest to anyone that they homeschool their children. But of course, in 2020, one thing I forgot to tell you is that I helped establish a school that is an umbrella for homeschoolers that my son now attends. It's a high school. And I give a shout out to the Pearl Remote Democratic Education.
Yes,
High
call
School.
it out.
And helping as a consultant, having put that together and setting it up to work the way teenagers operate. And a lot of the things that systems ignore show up in the operations of the school. But back to the public school and even private school experience, because there are ways of channeling every type of parent, every type of family, what ends up happening is it just makes you tired. And so when I would encounter people who were very determined to try to prove a point to the school system and to show them who's the boss, then I would come back in a few months and they just would be almost lifeless because of the emotional drain of the experience. And I would absorb that. And as a neurodivergent person and a very empathetic person, I would really absorb that and take that on and feel like I had not succeeded in pointing out to them the tax that the system takes out on them.
I know that system drain that you're speaking to.
Yeah. Yep.
And you can see it not only in, like you said, the parents' eyes, but also the kids' eyes. And they just go to sleep faster. The kids, they just fall in line.
So one of the things, I think I talked about this in one of the videos, or at least one of the videos that I sent you, even though I don't coach parents exclusively anymore, the theme for me always will be connection. Everything I did in that role was about helping the family connect. So the thing about the system is not only does it wear you down, but one of the things that it does is it creates a disconnection in the family, in that if you're fighting with them all the time and that is taking all your attention and all your energy, you still have a neurodivergent child at home who needs for you to smile at them and who needs a hug from you after a day of masking and they're having an explosion. And so there's so many things that I encountered in these meetings that were said that actually could have put wedges between me and my son. And I refused to let that happen. And actually, I was very meticulous in going back over reports and taking out certain language. And here's a tip. And I know I don't do parenting stuff anymore, but it doesn't matter what happened in that meeting, so to speak. What matters is what's in the record about what happened in the meeting, because in this society, we value the written word. And if it's in writing, then we believe that that happened. And so there's so much language in so many ways that, you know, on the one hand, they're saying, well, no, he doesn't need support. But on the other hand, they're villainizing him. And it's like, well, which one is it? And if you go through this enough times, you just get disgusted, not only with the situation, but with your child. And why don't you just act right? Why don't you just do what they tell you to do? Because the system doesn't make sense to my kid. That's why. And it's harmful and it's hurtful. And so there's so many wedges. You know, well, are they the only child? Well, is there somebody new living in the house? Is there some change in the home? Just these little like pinpricks or paper cuts that if you add them all up, you've got scars all over your body. But if you take them one by one, they don't seem like a lot. And I always emphasize and will always emphasize that it's most important to preserve the connection with your kid. So no matter what language other people use, no matter how difficult the day was, or if they called you to pick them up early, find some place where you can connect with them.
Yeah. Yeah. We talk about that in my program. Instead of asking, how was your day? When you first see them come off the school bus, just say, I'm so happy to see you. I've missed you today.
That unloads a lot of expectation.
So much. And it just feels good, right? Imagine you coming home and just like, even on this podcast interview, it's just like so habitual. I'm just like, I'm so glad to see you and spend this time with you.
Yeah, yeah.
It just feels good. That's what I want. Yeah, that's what I want.
We're conditioned, you know, we're on autopilot with a lot of things, and there's social norms and just ways we're expected to act. Being a parent of a neurodivergent child, so it's not my child's responsibility to be anything for me, but I will say this: he has been and continues to be one of my greatest spiritual teachers, because there are lessons that I could not have learned anywhere else. I just could not have, and that has to do with the relationship, that has to do with how my ego is tied to his existence, and just the point of view of being his parent, and also his neurodivergence saying, no, this is uncomfortable to me. This hurts me. I can't do it. So in those moments, I have to decide, am I going to continue generations of invalidating and ignoring? Or am I going to do something different? And a lot of times I did invalidate and I did ignore. But at some point it became clear to me that I had to be the kind of parent that he needs. And that's not the same kind of parent that everybody else needs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So good.
And so I think, the big question, what do I do? Your 3 questions, or wait a minute, is that number 2? Oh, what do I do? So I was talking about decolonizing neurodivergence. And again, everything I talk about, my son is the foundation for these things. I knew I would be doing this type of work when he was in pre-K, because things just did not make sense to me. They just didn't. Why are we going through this? Why are we having to do it this way? Why are we using these words? Why are these people behaving this way? And so the theme of decolonizing neurodivergence is about how neurodivergence is constructed. Mm-hmm. So as I understand, neurodivergence is not a clinical term, but it's an umbrella term. Mm-hmm. That there are neurodivergencies under here, like ADHD and autism, bipolar disorder, learning disabilities, and some other things. And yes, there are medical terms associated or connected to neurodivergencies, but it's also socially created. And here's what I mean. The idea that you are neurodivergent is really it's context specific. So if you have incredibly sensitive smell, for example, like I'm very sensitive to smells and sounds. In a modern building where you have to sit for 8 hours a day, it is excruciating. It makes me stand out. It makes me uncomfortable. It could make me go against the norms, make my behavior seem erratic. But if I am a scout and I take people out on safaris, then the fact that I can hear just the smallest amount of noise, or I can hear a reel coming down the side of a hill, this little opening and water's coming through, or I can smell, where an animal has been, then those things keep me alive. But sitting in a classroom in this unnatural environment where I'm supposed to sit for 8 hours a day is just painful. And it also makes me look deviant when I push back on it. And so the way things are set up, our school system is an 1800s model that has been patched over and over again. You start to be more and more neurodivergent, not really, but society starts to treat you more and more like a neurodivergent person the further along you get in school. So in daycare, it starts with you not being able to sit crisscross applesauce, or being able to sit for an hour, 30 minutes, or not being able to walk in line, or wanting to wander off, because my son did a lot of wandering, but he needed to just move around, and he was in a room with a lot of kids. And then in kindergarten, it was something else. But what's happening along the way is he's saying, I need autonomy. He's saying, I need to be able to do things this way. And if you can't tell by listening to me, I'm a Black female with a Black son, and he just isn't allowed to do that. Mm-hmm. And people start to attach words to him that had nothing to do with what was happening. And they started to, from day one, like even before daycare, focus on the behavior and not the need behind the behavior. And so when I say that neurodivergence is constructed, it's the definition of how much you're fitting in along the way. And the different groups of people are expected to fit in different ways. And the definition of neurodivergence has a lot, it is steeped in the rules of white supremacy. And some of those rules include urgency, the need for perfection, the power of the written word, individualism, paternalism, objectivity. And so the school, the education system, the state says there's one best way to do everything. And if he's not doing it this way, then it doesn't work. So one saving grace was that he was good at standardized tests. But he might not have been so good at certain things that were happening in the classroom. And if he couldn't do it that particular way, then that was problematic. Or maybe he needed more breaks, or maybe he needed to carry heavy books. The fixes that we needed were very simple fixes and did not require additional staff or money. But because of this mindset, it was determined that he would always be looked at for his behavior before they saw his need. And so that is a very colonial kind of attitude towards him and towards everybody in general. So when I think about colonizing, what that's basically doing is looking at all of us as categories of workers. So in my first Decolonizing Neurodivergence book, I talk about neurodivergence and these neurodivergencies as categories of workers, because that's how it's treated. What can we extract? Because colonization is about resource extraction to the point that you exhaust whatever it is, even if that's a human life. This resource extraction comes in categories called ADHD, autism, learning disabilities, bipolar disorder, and others. So in these categories, this is how much companies can get from you. This is how much schools can get from you, because students work for schools. They're not just students. They're not just preparing for the workforce, but they work for schools. They work with test scores and behaviors that show, that demonstrate this sort of fake, not sort of, but this fake meritocracy that help preserve the status quo, help keeps things in place. And so when I say decolonizing neurodivergence, the core of what happens around children who have ADHD, autism, these other neurodivergencies has to do with the way society tries to extract resources from them.
Yeah, thank you for that breakdown. And I am sure that many who are listening know that experience as well.
Yeah.
What really hit for me was when you said, even when it doesn't cost the school anything other than mindset. And I have a client who's going through that very thing and was told, no, we can't make accommodations. And she was like, this is talking about being close to the board. This is talking about having more time on a test. This isn't going to cost anything, but it's that inflexibility of, like you said, the system to accommodate something that is like, I'm thirsty, I need to drink water, I need to go to the bathroom. Like, that's what we're talking about here.
Right. So let me tell you one of the things that captured my attention about the work that you're doing. As I understand it, you don't have any children, right? So if you believe the argument that I've put together, you know, one of the ways that society is able to extract from women is through their children. Extract resources, because this foundation of the society is built on free labor from women. And it just couldn't exist without it. So what that means is that the system leverages children against their parents. So there are things you're going to do in order to keep your children safe. This is why Toni Morrison's book, Beloved, is so weird. It's infanticide, where it's so gripping to people, because people are like, I can't even imagine But basically what she's saying is I would rather do this than to have my child live in slavery, this just inhumane institution. And I'm bringing up that example to talk about, she knows how they leverage kids, and I'm not telling anybody to harm their children, but she knows, the woman in the book knows how they leverage children against their parents. And what I saw and what attracted me, or what held my, one of the things that held my attention, was that that's not something that can be leveraged against you. Like, you really can step back and see the panoramic view a lot clearer. And of course, I'm sure there are people in your life, that children that you care deeply about and connected to and all those things. But it offers a different point of view that is very much needed in an environment where children become bargaining chips.
Thank you for saying that.
Sure.
I appreciate that. It's an interesting space to be in parenting without children. And really, you see me, I feel deeply seen right now, because that's how I feel in that space. Is really putting all of the not all of the responsibility, but honestly, the responsibility back onto the adults to say, you cut those power cords.
Right.
And really putting it back into those systems. And I did it in my classroom. I did it for my own kids in my classroom and became that. And it got to a point where the system wore me down. And I remember when I left, my director of the school that I was teaching at, when I left, she looked at me and she said, Megan, you are just sensitive to the mistreatment of children. And I said, if that is my cross to bear for my life, I will bear it with pride.
Yes, absolutely.
I hope everyone becomes sensitive to the mistreatment of children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And your point of view is really powerful. I mean, for a variety of reasons. But there's so many of us, especially those of us who are neurodivergent ourselves. So it's, I think, impossible to live in this society and be neurodivergent and not experience some sort of trauma, because the society is not set up for us. We're constantly pushing against the systems in the society. And that's something that many of us who've experienced trauma, and I experienced a lot of trauma in my childhood, we have to work past or through in order to be able to even help our child, sometimes to even be able to see them. And it's good. And it's different because we're connected with them in a way that is also good or bad, right or wrong, part of our identity. And so it's really difficult for a lot of us to separate those two things, like them, you know, and I understand, you know, like you get into talking about narcissists and all that, but them as an extension of you. It's really, especially if you feel deeply wounded by things that have happened in your life, and then you see other people wounding your child, it's really difficult to not jump in and you know, try to fix your child a certain way, make them a certain way. So you have a point of view, you have some distance in which you can clear the air, and you can actually carve out a very safe space for not only the children, but the parents as well.
Yeah. I feel that.
Yeah, it's very much needed. Because the thing about our colonized society is that, you know, we talked about perfection and urgency being values in our society. A lot of us as parents, especially parents where our children have certain kinds of needs, it's like something is chasing us all the time. And it makes everything so urgent. It makes it important to get things right. It makes it important to say all the right things. And we have to have spaces where we can get a rest from that in order to be able to pour something into our children.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is exactly it. I talk about removing fear-based punishments because fear just activates that threat response. And I know that you know this. And so we're removing fear-based punishments, but we also give what we can hold. So if we're holding and punishing our own self into fear-based punishments with all the would, shoulds, you should have done it. What are you? You're a bad parent. What's wrong with you? Why'd you do that? They hate that. Why can't they just act like that? Right. And we're activating ourselves because that's what we're holding. And then that's would be natural for us to give.
Right.
And so really this lens of like, hey, mistakes. I have this journal. I keep it close to me. It's called my inner bully journal. And every time my inner bully comes out to fear-based punish me, I write that girl a love note. I see you. I love you. I see you're protecting me. I see that sense of urgency is up. I see that you want to rip yourself apart. This is not needed right now. You are safe. You are loved. The whole first half of this journal is just me saying, you are worthy. It's okay. And really being able to do that. So then I can give that because I want everyone to have that so that they can give it, because you know who needs it the most? The people who are learning.
Yes.
The kids.
Yes, absolutely. And when we can't create these spaces for our kids, it just makes it easier for them to be just swallowed up by a system. So one of the things that, because with this Decolonizing Neurodivergence book, and just to be clear, so that is my first book, and I am currently in the process of crowdfunding for my second book. And my second book is going to be about neurodiversity as a leadership principle. But it's still related to decolonizing. It's still like the decolonizing principle. And it's really easy to get gobbled up by the system. Like the more you push back on it when you're operating from this place of fear, that it sounds like the more you're moving towards it. For example, when you have Black parents who are saying, well, I'm going to beat them before the police get them because they need to learn respect authority, but that doesn't do what people think that it should do. And actually, it makes the interactions with the police much worse. And it's sometimes difficult to untangle all these things and just not want to just take your arms and wrap your arms around your kid and never let them out of the house. Of course, we know we can't do that. But the first thing we have to do is wrap our arms around ourselves.
Yep.
And it's hard.
It is hard. I have it literally tattooed on me. Be kind. And I have it everywhere around me. My business is called it. There's
I love it.
3 rules of every class I teach. Be kind to myself, be kind to my family, be kind to my community, because kindness is the hardest thing.
It's the hardest thing. And you know what? It's part of decolonizing neurodivergence. So one of the things that I'm very dissatisfied with is the mental health therapeutic system in this country. Because when we go, either as individuals or as families, we go into therapy, you walk into the room and in most cases, they're going to talk to you about your personal individual experiences. And they're going to drill down on things that you consider to be flaws and shortcomings and things you want to change. And I think that there's a huge gap there, because you didn't get in that room by yourself. There are logical outcomes to living in the systems in which that operate around us. And you are surrounded by systems. Your family is a system. Your family is your first system. Your family is the system that imports the values of every other system. And so you bring in those values from child welfare. You bring in those values from the quote unquote criminal justice system. You bring in those values from the education system that puts Black boys and Black girls on a path from school to prison. You, as a parent, even trying to do your very best, you import the values of these different systems. Many of the outcomes make sense.
Yeah.
Because they set you on a pathway to certain outcomes. And so we know that the prisons are going to be filled up because the people who create them say that they will be. It doesn't matter what the crime rate is. This is the logic of the system. And so when you go in and you seek counseling, there are many counselors who do not even want to talk about how systems interact with our lives and shape our outcomes. They want to behave and act like those things don't exist and they don't have the impact that they have in our lives, and which is hugely invalidating and dismissive, especially for people who've been minoritized by the society. And so, but these are logics. These are logics that will happen. They are codified in the law. They are written in the law. They are written in bureaucratic practice. They are written in culture. These logics will have an outcome. And so when you go into the room and you talk about addiction, it isn't just a conversation about what is happening with you and your family. It is a much bigger conversation about disconnection from the entire world. And that's what colonization does. In extracting resources from us, in draining of us our natural resources, it inevitably disconnects us from the rest of the world. You have to be separate in order for that extraction to happen. And so people feel disconnected, they feel cut off. And I've heard people say like the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. It's an issue about connection. It's an issue about disconnection. And so there are logics that come with these systems. We know that the jails will be filled up. We know that certain data will be collected to justify certain things. But in people's individual lives, we're not having conversations about what that looks like, how you end up in a therapeutic environment or needing support from somebody else. And so what I'm saying is about giving yourself grace and recognizing that, yes, you have some free will, but also you are also acting according to the logic of the systems that are part of your life. And I don't know anybody who can escape those logics. If you can, God bless you. You probably have a lot of means, but most people cannot, because in one way or the other, either physically or emotionally, mentally, financially, you are pulled according to that logic. We still have free will, we can make choices, but the choices look different for different people. And I'm saying, especially with parents, because I know that is your core audience, your core community, when you're in these situations and the focus is on your individual shortcomings, also think about the broader world to which you are connected and try to find a space to give yourself grace. And even if you made a quote unquote mistake today, you don't have to make that mistake tomorrow. Or if you made that mistake, quote unquote, 5 minutes ago, you could say, you know what? And I've said this to my son, I wish I had dealt with that a little differently.
Feeling that in that conversation, that I like literally just like lean back. Can you imagine just like that? It's just like, it just feels free. It feels like freedom. I don't have, this is too heavy for me. And even in this moment, this is too heavy.
And I can remember a specific moment in which I said that. And in that moment, it was very freeing. Like the weight of the world was on me. because there was a situation with the little boy, and I just knew my son would be the one getting in trouble. And my son, who usually is pacifist, tries to be diplomatic, he didn't stand down this time, and it just made me so afraid. And I was like, what is going on here? And I charged into the situation and pulled him out of the situation. And I should have removed him from the situation, but I could have done it much differently. And my language towards him could have been different. But I told him later, like, it makes me want to cry just thinking about it. I wish I had dealt with that differently and used words that made it clear that I wasn't mad at you. I just was scared. And he said, I get it.
Yeah. Because he gets it because he lives it too.
Yeah.
There's probably thousands of moments.
Yes.
That are like, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. If I could go back and redo it, this is what I would have done differently.
Yeah.
That power of self-reflection.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the systems and knowing the impact and when it impacts one and just how potent fear is, something that I just want to help like contextualize is for parents and families. And if someone's listening and they're like, well, how does this all impact me? Right? You said if it doesn't impact you, you probably have a lot of means, and to even bring it back down, to even do an assessment to think about if it's me and my child, if something happens to my child, I'm affected by it.
Oh yes, for
so
sure.
It affects for both of us, right?
Yes.
If there's siblings and one sibling is the quote unquote good child and the other sibling is the quote unquote naughty child, and I go to reprimand the naughty child, it impacts the quote unquote good child. So now we've expanded out. So let's expand that out even further. If we're out in the community and we're walking in the park and we see someone, we're witnessing something happen to another person, it impacts us.
Right. Absolutely.
And you expand that out and out, even in the classroom, when you're a teacher and you have kids in the classroom and one kid gets sent to the principal's office, it impacts the entire class.
Yes.
It takes time for the whole class to come back to that. Then think about one class in a school. If one class is the off class, it impacts the whole school.
Absolutely.
And that's how it creates this systems approach. And that's why I love this work. And I love, I can't wait to read your book, to go into this even further, to say this is truly not only happening on the micro level or the macro levels of systems and the school to prison pipeline and all of these systems that are like, oh man, I could never impact them. No, you are impacting them in your home,
right?
With the relationship with yourself and the relationship with your child,
right?
And everything that you're saying, it's just so like, oof.
Yeah, and I probably have to come back because what you're making me, your conversations make me think about is this is a type of resistance. When you decide that the connection is more important than grades, you are.
I am so glad you're going here. I just recorded, I kid you not, I was like, y'all, I have to be off at 2:55 because I have a 3:00 appointment for a podcast. And I was talking about, what are you saying yes to? You tell me right now, you're going into the new school year. Ooh, no one wants to talk about new school year. Well, it's coming. We're all going to be impacted by it. Even me, I'm impacted by it. Absolutely. My husband is a PE teacher. He's impacted by it. I call them Super Bowl moments. Super Bowl moments is like the Super Bowl NFL teams winning the Super Bowl. Those are the big moments where you want to come to play and you want to come to play to win. And there's lots of times of scrimmages and practices. And are you aware that you're practicing those tools? Are you practicing tools of punishment? Or are you going to practice tools of connection? So that when your kids coming home with that grade, you can say, wow, this seems like this was a really hard test for you.
Yes, absolutely.
And I love this stuff where you can value the relationship and build that trust, and you can be able to become their safe space.
Right. And because at the end of the day, that's what you have. You don't.
That's all you have.
That's all you have. So I want to challenge people to do this. If they call you to come pick up your kid from school for the 10th time that week, but they won't let it go to that many, we'll say the 3rd time that week. Instead of charging in, well, what happened and what went on and you know, like either aiming at the teacher or principal or your child. Walk in and give your child a hug.
Well, you're just going to let them get away with that? That's what you're going to be met with, that, right? And you're
Yeah, because somebody in that room is going to keep poking.
Yes.
Because
yes.
they want you to do something that they can't do.
Yes.
But what you are doing something they can't do, which is going back to this value about urgency.
Yes.
This happened, you got to come here, you got to deal with this, you got to stamp this out, you got to make sure this is not happening. Because I think one of the videos I talk about stamping out behavior.
Yes.
You got to deal with this right now, and they can't get away with that. And if we don't get it right now, you know, they'll go rob a bank one day. No, they won't.
No, they won't.
Shush it. No, they won't. But what you can do in that moment, what is urgent in that moment, is for your child to know that you're an advocate. And that no matter what the consequences turn out to be or whatever happens, taking 5 minutes to just give them a hug, and even if you don't hug them, walk in silence, go in silent. You don't have to go in like the inspector and figure out what happened and solve the riddle. You don't have to do that. The sense of urgency, perfection, they're not real. You don't have to do that. What I think you should do is be available.
To your child, not the school.
Right. Let's clarify that.
Yeah.
Be available because they obviously needed something they weren't getting.
Yep.
So getting off work is not about, so we can reframe it, right? So we can decolonize the whole thing.
Yep.
Getting off work and having to leave your job and losing wages that day is not about your child showing his ass at school.
Yep.
It is about he has a need, or she has needed, they have a need. They needed you in them, or they needed something. They need someone in that moment. So it's no different than them having a stomach bug. It's different, but there still is, the situation is about the need. There was something that they didn't either have the skills or the power to resolve for themselves, and they needed you there.
And that's the investment you're making.
That's the investment. That's the investment, because I promise you, the whole thing about test scores, and I know grades, whatever, but that's a whole other conversation. It won't hold up. That will not hold up. The relationship, however, will hold up.
I know that you don't know me and my story very well. This started, what you're speaking to speaks just, I didn't even know we were going to go here, but I'm glad we're going here. Just from this own conversation that we talk about often on this podcast, that just to connect us back, my listeners know in 3rd grade, I flunked the spelling test. The word was of, I couldn't spell it. It was UV. Came home, my dad, Harvard educated, doing the best he knew. Your spelling is atrocious, Megan. What's wrong with you? You know, so you know what I did? I figured out the system.
Mm-hmm.
What I did, I cheated. I started to write it, kept it in I started bringing home A's. Amazing. Did I know how to spell? No. I figured out how to get it away, right? Exponential, expand on those skills. 22, stressed, struggled, feeling alone, constantly, that build up and the erosion of the relationship with my parents, and said, Mom, I'm done with this relationship. Went no contact for 8 years. And seeing that was the logical, that was the natural consequence of missing the signs all along, while valuing and being available to this mindset that had sense of urgency, bad kid, punish them, comply. If they're not going to listen, they're a bad kid, all these things. And truly, I was a stressed out child, saying, who do I need to defend myself from? And I would build a wall up so quickly that it eroded the relationship. My mom's now passed almost 10 years. And I think back, and what you touched on earlier is that our relationship was the logical consequence of many decisions in a system that kept both of us and all of us engaging in a system, those little wedges. And my mom didn't have the awareness or the foresight or the ability to have what you said is like, whoa, these are little pinpricks here. And I'm not going to do that. And I love that you use those images. I just kept thinking, and that's why I do this work, is to be the person that I wish my mom had access to.
Yes, sure.
Say that she wasn't a bad mom. She wasn't a bad person for doing what she knew that she did, but to welcome her in to this conversation and break the systems and become the advocate and value the relationship over compliance. Because guess what you'll get when you value relationship? Guess what? You're probably going to get compliance a lot easier.
Yeah.
True. Not even just compliance, empowerment. You're going to get that in some way when you're available to them and their relationship, and you start to reattune back out and refocus that lens. Oh, yes. So good. I didn't even know we were going to go there, but I could.
Yeah.
I can't wait to have you back on. Maybe
I know, right? I know this. I don't know if this will be one episode or two.
I'll keep it one because they're so good. But maybe we could do like a book launch party or something for your next book.
Well, I want to invite people. So historically, what I've done is I would write a book and then try to distribute it myself because I do digital products. And I decided to do something different this time in seeking out people. And Megan will have the link to my crowdfunding, and I'm doing it myself. I'm administering it. Instead of doing that and hoping that people will see the value on the back end, I'm starting with people who are already invested in my success and saying, if you believe in this message, right? Because we have to have, this is about education, it's about jobs, it's about opportunities, it's about all those things, because all of these systems overlap in a lot of ways to produce certain outcomes. And if you will believe in the need for me to write about this and to deal thoughtfully with things that are happening in society under this heading, then I encourage you, I ask you to contribute on the front end so that because I run a business, I have to have time to write, I have to pay people to edit, I have to do these things because I really want this to be something. The first book was special and actually made it into a course, which I can talk about that later, but I'm focused on the book. And this one is different. I think I said earlier on TikTok, I'm morphing it into an account for my writing. And what I've been doing the whole time on TikTok, even knowing it sometimes consciously or unconsciously, I've been gathering thoughts and I've been putting a theory together. And when you look over the sum total of my account, what you see is theoretical development. And so I know TikTok can be straight up garbage sometimes, but the technology has provided me the space to do micro lessons, to teach, and also to build a body of theory and ideas that are going to ultimately change the conversation about neurodivergence. And I'll say this quickly. So this is all wrapped into one of the things I'm really concerned about are futurist studies. And what I notice about people who do future studies, they focus on artificial intelligence, they focus on innovation, they focus on technology. What I do not hear in these conversations are things about neurodiversity and how to include neurodiversity. If you're not having a conversation about neurodiversity, you are just creating new channels to hold on to the same power dynamic. That's all you're doing. And so that's why I want to talk about this out there.
I just got full body chills on that. That is big.
Yep. So support my book. I just got accepted to, it's a new program. It's Longtail Finance is sponsoring this Refi Bootcamp, and they teach you how to tokenize economies So we're looking at scientific data, mathematics, community building, all these things in the Web 3.0 space.
Mm-hmm.
So this is allowing me to pull all of these thoughts together, integrate all of these thoughts together, and think about how this looks in a virtual environment. So I'm really serious about being part of the futurist conversation. So it's not enough for us to struggle in the present. So we need these connections. We need this uplift. We need to fortify ourselves and strengthen ourselves and then our community so that we can operate in a different mode other than survivor mode, because there's a lot of work that has to be done. You have to look up from your desk in order to see the things that are happening on the horizon. And if we're constantly feeling like everything's so urgent and we have to be perfect and we have to do this and we have to do that and have to present this way and perform that way, then we can never pause to think about the kind of world we actually want to create.
Yeah. And that's how it just keeps going.
So support my writing.
I know. I love it. I can't wait. You said you're going to get me the link. I'll make sure that it's in here. And I am so glad and honored. And I know I said episodes are normally 20, 30 minutes, but we are wrapping close to an hour and it has like gone by. I have been locked in, tapped in.
I know.
I have been just drinking everything that you poured. So thank you for pouring so much. And thank you for spending so much time and energy and love. And I am honored that you created those videos for me to share on the platform.
Mm-hmm.
I am excited. I'm excited for September 22 so I can come on and engage and start pointing people and celebrating and talking about this. And I'm glad that we have this time together. I'm glad that you came and shared it. I think that it's going to really hit the listeners and whoever's absorbing this. I'm going to process this fast. And I'm going to pop it right into the group that I just came from to be like, alignment. That was the theme that's been coming up so much. It's just like alignment. And all of this work is just alignment. And even in this conversation, I was just like light bulb, like within the past week, all these conversations I've been having is just such alignment. And that just feels safe. It feels safe in a world right now that feels very unsafe. Here in this micro relationship that we've had feels very deeply safe. And I am honored. So anything else, final thoughts that you'd like to share?
That's it. I need the support. I want to come back because you mentioned stuff about feeling safe in your body and did like a whole trickle of thoughts. And I was like, that's for next time. But
can't wait till next time.
Deal. You and I will be talking. We will be in contact with each other. We have lots of things to share with each other. And as soon as I get off here, I will post that link.
Perfect.
I won't put it in here because
you can just email it to me.
I'll just send it to you. But I'm just really thrilled to be here, really happy to support the work that you are doing. I knew that eventually we would meet and have some sort of collaboration. I didn't know in what style or what mode it would be in, but thank you for doing this work and for doing it bravely.
That means a lot to me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I can't wait to have you back on.
Yay!